First, we're going to talk about driverless vehicles. It sounds very futuristic, Chris, but the reality is it's coming soon, and I am not ready for it because I don't even want a car to park itself. If it has that feature, I don't trust it. I think it's going to smash into the neighbor's car. I am not getting in a driverless car and hitting, Highway 1 and saying, yeah, let's just go 110.
Conceptually, a car that parks itself is very cool, but I've never actually been in one, and I don't know anyone who owns that sort of technology yet.
Either.
So it seems so foreign, and you see the commercials, and everyone's like, oh, it's so cool, but how much money is that worth extra? And I don't really trust that because my insurance is already really high as being considered someone who's more at risk of at a crash
being
than
25.
other people.
Well, and here's the thing too. So if your automatic, parallel parking thing doesn't work, so clearly you're on the hook with your insurance, right? Thank you very much.
Because it's your car and you're the person occupying the vehicle. I think that a lot of reliance right now for the self-driving technology is there has to be someone in the car or someone who has remote capabilities to stop the car. That's the process that we're at right now. So I think the liability would be on you if you don't take it upon yourself to stop the car from crashing. Last week, Ontario introduced legislation to allow self-driving cars on the road.
Really?
And this is the first time in Canada. Places in the States have done it for years and years, developing this tech. But that got me thinking, what's the history of self-driving cars and where do we see this going 5-10 years from now? Self-driving cars aren't in our driveways yet, but they are on roads in Ontario. Last week, Transportation Minister Jeff Urich announced that all companies taking part in Ontario's automated vehicle pilot program are now officially allowed to test their cars on public motorways. And as you'd expect, there are strict conditions the testers must abide by, like having someone in the vehicle or a person remote controlling it at all times, and authorities being made aware of the time, date, and location of each and every test. The Ontario trials are the first in Canada, but south of the border in both Arizona and California, they've seen self-driving cars on the road for years. Whoa. Apple, Google, and Tesla have all made substantial investments in developing the science and infrastructure that will eventually make safe, autonomous vehicles a reality. Tesla's CEO Elon Musk has even gone on the record with his thoughts on the bullish future of the industry.
Almost all cars produced will be autonomous in 10 years.
With all of the time, money, and resources put into developing autonomous cars, what's taking so long?
If you're a 17-year-old and you learn how to drive, you learn a rule book, you pass a test, you drive it on the road, maybe for a few hours, you pass a test. You are then given a two-ton vehicle, and you can drive that adequately. And now we're still at the point with self-driving vehicles. They've driven millions and millions of miles, and they're still not as good as humans. We're the perfect sensory machines. Self-driving cars need to be the perfect sensory machines. That's why it's taking so long, because we just have to get them good enough to do what we can do in a reactive and learning and an empathetic and sort of alive way.
That's Nick Badminton, world-renowned futurist and CEO of Vancouver-based firm Exponential Minds.
The Department of Transportation down in the US thinks that by 2023, more people are going to be subscribing to driverless car models, services, than they'll actually be buying vehicles. So within 10 years, it's an inevitability. I don't think that they'll be completely replacing human-driven vehicles because there's still a lot of them on the roads. I do think that they're going to be prevalent in terms of we have an app in our pocket, we call up a car whenever we need it.
As far as change goes, not as sudden or prolific as what Musk forecast, but it is going to happen. And most of us by now have seen videos of self-driving cars with the spinning wheels of 1,000 sensors on the roof going 100 miles per hour. But how do these cars actually work?
Very simply, there's cameras, like normal cameras, infrared cameras, and laser-based cameras that can tell who's on the street, whether it's cyclists, cars, pedestrians, where they are in the world through GPS and a number of other systems as well. And it processes a huge amount of data with its brain, and the brain is powered by artificial intelligence. It does that in real time. It processes terabytes of data every minute, and it will be eventually connecting all cars with each other so they can learn from each other, so it means that they can accelerate their learning and become even better drivers.
A big concern for adding automation to Canadian roads is, of course, the inevitable loss of transportation jobs. There wouldn't be a need for humans to be working in cars anymore, and so there wouldn't be.
Within 5 years, what you're going to see is a lot of the taxis, municipal transportation, and truck driving jobs are going to be getting mostly replaced by self-driving vehicles. Across Canada, that's about 500,000 jobs. which is quite a lot. And it's about 1.3, 1.5 million down in the States as well, if not even more.
And past the jobs numbers, Nick Badminton says that driverless technology could also change the fabric of our cities because you wouldn't need to park your car if it could just drop you off.
In North America, there's just about 60 billion square feet of parking. Imagine if we liberate that. And imagine if we liberate that for everything from like data centers to education centers, people, underground apartments, vertical farms and whatever. It completely changes the dynamic of cities. Imagine if we have more green space and less roads needed for driving, more pedestrianisation. It's just going to result in a better, healthier lifestyle. And what's really interesting is more people are going to move out of those cities, and these self-driving vehicles are going to turn into offices that people use on the way into centralized working locations. They're going to become entertainment centers. It's a complete reimagination of society that uses vehicles today.
And for those of you who might be feeling a little uneasy about what the future holds,
I urge people not to be scared. I urge people to be a little wary and to try things out and to give feedback and be part of that innovation now. In 5 years' time, it's going to be... taking a self-driving car is going to be the same as making a cup of tea in the corner of the office. It's just going to be normal life.
A cup of tea at highway speed. Good report, Chris. We're talking about driverless cars because Ontario has moved to allow them in a limited fashion on their streets, right?
Yep, and there's a lot of regulations that companies that want to be testing these cars in Ontario have to follow. As I said in the piece, authorities, wherever it is that you happen to be testing, need to know the area and about a 2-hour time window when you're going to be out there. They also need to know like all the technology and like that you need to be registered as a very, very specific program. But a lot of the regulations have sort of been lifted and people can really go on the streets now for the first time in the entire country.
I can see the advantage in the future once they've worked out the kinks.
Yeah.
Because then you could be on your way to an assignment as a journalist and you could be making phone calls. You could even be typing up your story.
Or you could have a nap on the way back from a very, very long day.
Exactly. You could have a nap, you could eat your lunch, you could do all kinds of things. And I can see the advantage to it. But frankly, I have concerns because I believe that these cars have the ability to self-select if you're going to crash into something, what they will crash into to do the least amount of damage to the humans.
This is like a 300 philosophy university course, right? Like who, if you were traveling in a car down the highway and you see two pedestrians for some reason crossing the highway and there's a big concrete barrier, is the AI going to determine that your life, being one life, is less valuable than the two people who are walking across? Like, this is stuff that needs to be sorted out. And I would absolutely be interested in taking a car like this, but I'm not going to be the first.
No, me
and
neither.
I don't feel inclined to be about the 2 millionth either. I'm going to let it work for a little while.
Exactly. Canada Line works for me. Hey, Mike in Maple Ridge, what did you want to say on this?
I just wanted to say that I didn't hear that the government of Ontario was going to tell the public when they were testing these cars, and so we at least have some kind of a warning.
Yeah, I think it's a very limited area. You make a good point, and thanks for calling, Mike, is that, I also want to know when there's a car that has no driver coming toward me on the highway as well, just in case something goes south.
And especially when a lot of these technologies are in the beta testing phase and before anything's actually like roadworthy or been sold from a manufacturer, I would want to as well. But a lot of these cars are from, say, the University of Waterloo or from...
Google.
Google, Uber, Tesla have all invested a lot of money into infrastructure to create the brains, is what Nick Badminton referred to it as, for these programs that are going to be the way of the future. He said 5 to 10 years from now.
That's incredible.
It's
5 to 10 years.
It's a lot of progress that needs to happen very quickly, but he's absolutely sold on that being the way of the future here in 2030. Yeah.
It's amazing.